Hello friends, good afternoon. This is Dr. Bharti Garg, Assistant Professor, Department of Public Administration, Punjab University, Chandigarh. Today we are going to discuss about the generalist versus specialist in administration, their controversy and their roles in administration which they play. Now, government performs large number of activities for its citizens. Our state is a welfare state, which means that state carries out, it has the responsibility to carry out the welfare for its masses. And for this purpose, it has large number of personnel employed. Now, all these personnel, they require to have different qualifications and skills and capabilities to perform these functions. In administration, there are horizontal as well as vertical divisions. Horizontal divisions pertain to regional divisions like states or districts or local level, rural areas, urban areas, etc. But as far as vertical division is concerned, it is about the division in personnel. Now, this division as such is not clearly demarcated or written down anywhere. This division is largely pertaining to the functions which these personnel are performing. And on the basis of these functional categorization, employees are categorized into generalists and specialists. Now we are going to delve into the meanings of generalist and specialist. Firstly, we'll discuss who is a generalist. A generalist is a person who doesn't have any specialized or technical background. This generalist is appointed on the basis of a common examination. He might have graduated from any stream like commerce or engineering or medical or any other specialized field, but his entry into the service is on the basis of common exam. The only basic qualification is his graduation degree. Now, after his selection, he is not appointed in a particular department or he doesn't serve his entire lifetime in a particular department. His career moves from one department to the other department. For example, in India, IAS, Indian Administrative Service Officer, is a generalist officer. This IAS officer, he may be a graduate from medical sciences or engineering or commerce or a graduate humanities background, but he is just selected on the basis of the common entrance exam and he serves all the departments of the government of India throughout his lifetime. So it is said that he is jack of all trades but master of none. On the other hand, specialists are those who are appointed on some specialized positions and they require specialized training for their appointment. For example, an engineer who is working as an XCN or a chief engineer. So here he requires a specialized vocation or training in the field of engineer. Or we can say a surgeon. He requires a specialized training or in surgery. Or if we talk about All India services also, IPS and Indian Forest Service officers, they are also specialist officers. Though IPS officers are appointed on the basis of common entrance exam, higher civil services examination, but after their foundation training, they are trained in forensic sciences, criminology, use of arms and ammunition, etc. So after their selection in the civil services, their branch becomes specialized. So specialized or specialists are those who require special training in a particular field and they perform that specific task only for which they are trained. So if we see the definitional aspects of generalist and specialist, we can say a generalist is one who has a very broad approach. It is believed that generalists have a very broad approach. They don't consider the problems from a narrow perspective. Since they are jack of all trades and master of none, it means that journalists are serving in various departments of the government. They are not specialized in one field. So they tend to acquire experience of various activities of the different aspects of the government, different aspects of the functioning of the government. So they cannot be confined to one aspect or one specialized field of activity. And since they have their liberal education, their background is from a liberal education, they are not specialized, their mindsets are not specialized or attuned to that special activity. So it is believed they have a broader approach, they have experience of various activities of the state they don't have a narrow approach, so they are better decision makers. So even if they are performing post-job activities, they are planning, organizing, staffing, directing, recruiting, coordinating and budgeting, it is believed they are better in performing these activities than the specialists. On the other hand, a specialist is one who has specialized in one field. As we discussed in the case of generalists, that they have a broader perspective and they take a broad approach, they are jack of all trades and they can take better decisions, they can perform better post-job activities. On the contrary, it is said that specialists are not so. They have a narrow approach since they are specialists in their field of activity. So their approach narrows down to their field of activity only. And it is believed that since they have a narrow approach with regard to the activities they are performing, so they are specialized. They know more and more about less and less. It means they know only more and more about lesser number of activities. That is their only area of activity. And since they have received that pre-vocational training or their training only in those specialized areas of activity only, so they are not considered as apt to perform post-job activities in the way the generalists are considered to have performed. Because they are planning, organizing, staffing, reporting, directing, coordinating, reporting, budgeting activities, that is the post-job activities, they will see these activities from a narrow approach only for which they have received training. Their training is not wider, their training is not broader in perspective, but it is narrow. But then both generalists and specialists both have their own place in administration. Now friends, we have discussed the definitional aspects of journalist and specialist, and we have seen that journalists are jack of all trades, master of none, but specialists are the masters. Now there is an Illinois model which is depicted in this slide, which gives the differences between the journalist and specialist and how they function. So the first thing which we see in this slide is that journalists are semi-prepared for large number of activities, and on the contrary, if you see, the specialists are well prepared for few activities. Now it means that journalists, as I said, they are jack of all trades, master of none, means they have to perform large number of activities, different activities. So it is believed they are never fully prepared for all those activities. They are semi-prepared for large number of activities. On the other hand, specialist, because he is a specialist, he has to perform a limited task, limited number of activities. So while performing those limited number of activities over a period of time, he acquires specialization. So he remains fully prepared for just few activities, whereas journalist is semi-prepared for large number of activities, which clearly shows that journalist is jack of all trades, master of none, and specialist is master of just a few activities. Now, as per this Illinois model, one major difference between journalist and specialist is that journalists spread scarce resources across wide spectrum of activities, whereas specialists, they consolidate the resources over few activities. Now, it is a very important point considering that we are a welfare state and we have limited resources and our priorities are large. We have to remove poverty, we have to see education, we have to provide employment to people, we have environmental concerns. So the point remains that we have large number of developmental issues, but our resources are very scarce. So it is very important that those resources are spread across uniformly so that we can achieve our developmental objectives. Now it is believed that a generalist who is trained for various activities, since he is a generalist, his mindset is not narrow, he has a broader perspective. So it is believed that generalists spread the resources uniformly against various priorities, whereas a specialist, since he is specialized in few activities, he has a narrow approach, he is trained to perform only few activities, so he will concentrate his resources only on those few activities. Now, Illinois model also gives the success rate of journalists and specialists. The success rate for the generalist is moderate. It means that since, as I mentioned previously also, journalist is jack of all trades, master of none. So he performs moderately across various activities. So failure rate is less relatively. But in comparison, if we see the specialist, his success rate with regard to one activity is high, but the failure rate with respect to other activities is also high. So his success rate is just limited to one activity and failure rate for the rest of the activities is high, whereas for the generalist, the success rate is moderate across all activities. So not only about the usage of resources and the success rate, Eleanor's model also predicts the future activity. Now with regard to the generalist, it is said that generalist approach is best with regards to the future where it is unpredictable, where it is unknown. Whereas for the specialist, it is predictable, where it is predictable future. So specialists are the best, because when we talk about uncertain future, for example, in developing countries like India, we have large number of priorities which are to be taken up and which needs to be catered to, and the results, they remain uncertain. They are generalist because they are generalist in approach, so that approach is best. But where specialized, because specialization is a trademark of developed societies where people are demanding specialized activities. So there the future remains predictable. There the development rate has already, there the development has already achieved a level. So their specialized activities or specialist personnel, they are more apt to deal with. So with regard to known or unknown future, we have to decide whether we want specialists at our positions or generalists at our positions. Now this Eleanor's model has also been depicted graphically in this slide. Now as you can see in this slide, on the x-axis is the problem aspect and on the y-axis is the success rate. Now as you can see the two timelines for the generalist and the specialist, the line which depicts the generalist, their success rate is uniform. The line is, though it is going up and down, but it is largely uniform success rate. But if you see the yellow line, that is the success rate for the specialist, and it adopts a high up at one point. It shows that only at one aspect, only with regard to one or just a few activities, their success rate is very high. So their success rate is not uniformly distributed, whereas the success rate of journalist officers is uniformly distributed across the projects. So this Eleanor's model clearly shows that why developing societies like India, they have adopted generalist approach to the civil services in India in contrast to the specialist services. Now friends, we have as of now discussed the meaning and definition of the generalist and the specialist, and we have seen which all category of officers are included in the generalist category and the specialist categories. And we have also seen the Eleanor's model, which clearly describes about the success rate of the generalist specialists and how they have been functioning and why the generalists are considered to have a broader approach, since the success rate is uniformly distributed across the projects and the activities of the state. But the relationship between generalist and specialist is not very smooth. We should not consider that generalist and specialist, since of course they are two parts of the state, same machinery of the state. Both are necessary, both function together, both are required for the effective and efficient functioning of the state. And administration cannot function without either without the generalist or without the specialist. But the point remains is that their relationship is not very cordial. Their relationship is mired into controversies. Now the point that comes up is why there is a controversy between the generalist and specialist, since both are important for administration. You cannot do without jack of all trade and master of none kind of civil servants, and you cannot do without the specialists. So why this controversy? And this controversy has been raging over the years. It is said that the elitist character of the IAS officers, the elitist character, it means they are occupying highest policy making positions, they are amateurs, they are the ones who are making the decisions. So the elitist character of the IAS officers, it has created discontentment amongst the specialists. Now discontentment, it means that since IAS officers, they are generalists, that IAS officer may be having a graduation, may be having a background in humanities or social sciences, but he may be manning a defense department or agriculture department or a science department. He is occupying the highest position of a secretary in that department. But a specialist is working, specialist in space technology or in agriculture or in defense or in medical sciences. That specialist is working below the generalist, who is just having background in humanities. So the controversy comes in, the discontentment comes in amongst the specialists that a generalist who might be having a background in humanities is ordering the specialist. So it is believed how far a generalist is capable to give orders to a specialist. Now, this controversy goes further where the generalists who are occupying highest positions in the department, they are the decision makers. They are telling the political bosses what policies are to be framed, how those policies are to be framed, how those policies are to be executed. Now the execution part comes to the specialists who function at the positions of the directorates. Now they say we are just directors, we are not secretaries. Why aren't we are specialists in the field? We know specialized activities, we have specialized knowledge. Why are we just working at the directorates? Why can't we be secretaries? Why can't our advice be considered by the political bosses? We are specialists, then why amateurs are considered for the policy making decisions and the implementing decisions, and why are they acting as our bosses over us? Now, as I just mentioned, various technical departments of the Government of India, they are manned by generalists. Since we have a generalist administrative system like space, defense, medical sciences, they all are governed, their secretaries are all generalist administrators. So in the process, when a generalist who might be just having background in humanities, he is heading a technical department, and in the process thereby the technocrats, space scientists, doctors, engineers, they feel sidelined, they feel ignored, and especially when their advice, when their views are not even considered by the generalist bosses. So they feel that how come a generalist can decide about the policies when he does not know an iota of that matter, and a specialist is not even, and a matter is not even discussed with the specialist, and so how come a journalist officer is ordering a technocrat? So the point is that there is a controversy between journalists and specialists. It is not that only technocrats or the specialists are having discontentment against the journalists. Journalists are also having discontentment against the specialists. There's no doubt journalists are placed at the highest positions, but they also know that they are considered because they have a wider approach and they have more experience, they are amateurs, and since our system is based on generalist administration, so they are also giving, often they also disregard the advice of the technocrats or the specialists. And they also believe that technocrats or the specialists, they have a very narrow approach. They're just confined to one department, and journalists have wider approach. They have to deal with so many other problems, managing, planning, budgeting, forecasting. So it is better that they should be involved with these activities rather than specialists. So whenever they feel that whenever any specialized matter comes up, they can only consult the specialist, or specialists can be given the task of implementation rather than involving them in the task of policy making and giving advice to the political bosses. Now we have seen that there are definitely points of controversy between the generalists and the specialists. Now we have to deal with this controversy. There are scholars, academicians, and practitioners who have different views with regard to whether we should opt for generalist system of administration or a specialist system of administration. Now friends, let us see the arguments for and against this generalist versus specialist controversy. Firstly, we'll see what is the case for in favor of generalist. Now scholars have put forward various arguments, various points in supporting the generalist system of administration. Amongst the many arguments that favor the generalist system of administration, the first point is that journalist officers, they have multifarious activities to perform. Their experience is very wide, very varied. They have links to the grassroots level of administration. They know better how to plan since they're amateurs. They know better how to carry out post-job activities. So it is better that we should have generalist system of administration. The second argument given in favor of generalists is that generalists are better positioned or better they are capable to deal with the problem solving methods. They can arbitrate in a better way. Since they are generalists, they work in different departments of the government, they are not specialists, they don't have a narrow approach. So their approach of doing work is interdisciplinary in nature. So their perspectives are wider, they can arbitrate the problems in a better way, they can find better solutions to the problems. The next argument given in favor of generalists is that they function in large number of field postings, so they have a better understanding of socio-economic, legal problems and various perspectives they have. So they are better positioned to decide which policies are to be made, how they are to be implemented, how they are to be executed, what solutions are to be found out. So there is no doubt that generalists, since they are generalists, our system is designed in such a manner that they are appointed at different positions. They are functioning at the headquarters, they are functioning in the field, they are functioning in different departments, be it legal department or judicial department or science department, agriculture, food, etc. So they tend to have better understanding of socio-economic, legal aspects of every issue. So definitely they are better conflict resoluters than dealing with conflicts in a narrow perspective. It has also come to light that generalists, since as I have been discussing in my previous words, that generalists are appointed in various departments, they have a broad outlook, wide experience, and they have been dealing with technical matters also. So it is believed that they can coordinate even the technical activities in a better way than the technocrats. And it has been found that technocrats, when they have been asked to do the generalist job, they are lost to both the worlds. It means that the specialist, when he performs the job of a generalist, he neither remains a specialist nor he can function as a generalist in a better way. So on the whole, if we see this discussion of case for generalist or the arguments for generalist in favor of the generalist, we find that generalist, the IAS officer, he may be having any kind of background, maybe of humanities or of social sciences or of medical or of commerce background, but he has been trained to become a generalist. So there is no second thought to the argument that they are better trained to carry out post-cob activities in conflict resolution, in coordinating even the technical departments. They are better planners and implementers of policies in comparison to technocrats. Now friends, we have seen arguments in favor of generalist system of administration. We have seen that those who say that generalists are better suitable to have higher administrative positions, but dear friends, on the contrary, we have arguments for the specialists also. Those who say that instead of generalist system of administration, we have specialist system of administration. And they also put forward various arguments with regard to specialist civil services. So in light of that, the first point which comes up is the technological improvements. So they say that since we have many technological developments and technological improvements, generalist administrators, they are not capable to deal with those technological developments. Only a specialist can deal with those technological improvements. A specialist should be given primacy over the generalists. In line with these technological improvements, if we see, we have widespread developments in computer technology, telecommunications, we have video conferencing, we have the information knowledge which is coming up. It is just flowing like anything. So in that light, if we see, these developments are brought about by technocrats only, specialists only. And today in the present day times, administration cannot run without technology. We cannot even think of administration without these technologies incorporated. Even for the welfare schemes, if we see the developmental functions which we see, we cannot function without technology. We are in the present day times talking of cashless economy, we are talking of internet banking, we are we are just passing the messages at immense speed. We have our computers in our mobile phones. So all these technologies in administration, we are talking of e-governance, we are talking of governance over the internet. So these technologies, they cannot function in administration also without technocrats. So that is why technocrats should be involved with administration, with the policy making role, also apart from the generalists. Other arguments that are put forward in the favor of specialists or technocrats is that government is also realizing their importance. So they are also involved with large number of developmental projects like infrastructure development or providing services to the people at the grassroots level. But the point remains, they are still working under the hand of a specialist. Since we all know that we cannot do without the involvement of technocrats, especially in the present day times, and the kind of services the technocrats are giving to the society, to the government, and helping the government in serving the society, reaching out to the downtrodden sections of the society. So this has questioned the jack of all, master of none principle and giving more importance to technocrats. So this itself demands that specialists are important in administration, only generalist is not important. Last but not the least, it is an era of super specialization. And technocrats have been believing that if the head of the department is a specialist, he can deliver better results. And if the head of the department is a generalist, he is going to create roadblocks in the functioning of that department, because they believe he has no knowledge about that field and only specialists can deliver better results. So in this era of demand for super specialization from the public, from all the sectors of the economy, from all the sectors of the society, technocrats or the specialists believe in this era, it is their era, so they should be placed at higher positions in contrast to generalists. Now friends, up to this point we have seen what is the case for the generalist and what is the case for specialist. There are scholars who are favoring generalist system of administration, there are scholars who are favoring specialist system of administration. But there is no second thoughts about the fact that specialists have discontentment against the generalists. And the main points of discontentment is that the specialists feel that they don't have access to top level policy making positions. Their promotion channels are very limited and they are restricted by the generalist. Their pay and service conditions are not very attractive in comparison to the generalist administrators. They believe that their advice and suggestions which they give to the generalist bosses, they are not considered, since journalists consider them as subordinates and they are not treated as at par with the journalist administrators. So as I discussed previously, we cannot do either without the journalist or without the specialist. Need of the hour is to have both. Why both? Because journalist has breadth of knowledge and specialist has depth of knowledge. So we cannot do either without the breadth of knowledge or without the depth of knowledge. We need both journalists and specialists. So we need to devise ways to have harmonious relationship between both journalists and specialists. So since we need a harmonious collaboration between journalists and specialists, the next question that comes up is how to have that harmonious collaboration between journalists and specialists. The first point that comes up is to leave that bureaucratic approach, bureaucratic mindset of the colonial past, and to have more specialization in our policy making, policy implementation, and so that our better policies are made. So let us think of the ways, let us devise ways where both journalists and specialists, they come together, they collaborate, and we come out with better policies involving both journalists and specialists. Various commissions and committees in India, more specifically, Second Administrative Reforms Commission has also suggested about the domain assignment. Now, domain assignment means you are training a journalist officer in a particular domain. For example, if a journalist officer is involved with agricultural activities, even if he is a generalist officer having a humanities or a social sciences background or who has come through a common civil services examination, he should be trained in that domain itself, so that he also acquires better specialized knowledge of that field, so that better policies can be made. So this suggestion can also be considered to have harmonious relationship between journalists and specialists. We must understand that the era of administrative tasks being very simple, that era is over. We need to have professionalism and specialization in our services. People are demanding specialization. Various partners, trade partners and countries across the world, governments across the world, institutions across the world, they are demanding specialization in services. So we cannot just perform the tasks the way journalists have been performing. Need of the hour is that we must have specialists in the policy making roles, so that administrative tasks which are becoming complex day by day, they can be dealt with in a better way. A very good suggestion that can be considered is that we should do away with the parallel hierarchies of journalists and specialists, and we should consider an integrated hierarchy where both journalists and specialists, they get a chance to man top positions, and thus even the specialists, they can understand the perspective of the journalist in a better way, and journalists, when they man technocrats position, they can understand the specialist point of view in a better way. I believe one of the more healthier ways of developing harmonious relationship between journalists and specialists is that there should be role reversals. Journalists should have a technical mindset. They should be technically their mindset should be technically bent, so that they understand technocrats' point of view, and technocrats should be given better training in the POSCOB activities, so that even they learn how to plan, how to organize, how to carry out staffing activities, reporting, budgeting, coordinating, etc. So it is better that they both understand each other's role in a better way and carry out each other's activities. Only when they will have role reversals and they will sit on each other's position, and they will have better communication, so that better working of administration can be carried out. Last but not the least, we need to create more services, like services for health, engineers, doctors, etc., so that we can have specialists also manning top positions. And we should try to rest this discontentment amongst the specialists by creating more specialized services and leaving those services in their domain. So that will also fulfill their demand to have specialists in those specialized services. Friends, I have discussed various suggestions to develop harmonious relationship between journalists and specialists. The point remains is that we cannot do either with the journalist or with the specialist. We need to have versatile officers who have both breadth of knowledge and deep depth of knowledge, who have wide skills in their kitty, who have better understanding. He may be a journalist, he may be a specialist. The point remains he should be a versatile officer dealing with all aspects of administration, and administration comprises of both journalist and specialist activities. So friends, we have seen who is a journalist, who is a specialist, why there is discontentment, why there is controversy between the journalist and specialist, why there is a conflict between the two. We have seen the scholars' arguments for the journalist, for the specialist, and we have seen the ways to develop harmonious relationship between the two. But the point remains, in my concluding remarks, I would say that the point remains is not to have journalists or specialists, but to have administrators who is a blend of both. For example, for the policy implementation part, we need coordinators, means a generalist role. But for the policy formulation part, we need some specialized roles, because we need to make good policies. So we should have those administrators who are versatile, who is a blend of both journalists and administrators, who is a blend of both journalists and specialist administrators. Thus, we should train our officers to become good officers, to become versatile officers, rather than becoming either a journalist officer or a specialist officer.